नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। दृष्ट्वानुयान्तं ऋषिम् आत्मजमपि अमग्नं देव्यो ह्रिया परिदहुर्न सुतस्य चित्रं तद्वीक्ष्य पृच्छति मुनौ जगदुस्तवास्ति स्त्रीपुंभिदानतु सुतस्य विविक्तदृष्टेः। ओम नमो भगवते तुभ्यं वासुदेवाय धीमहि प्रद्युम्नाय अनिरुद्धाय नमः संकर्षणाय च। ओम नमो भगवते तुभ्यं वासुदेवाय धीमहि प्रद्युम्नाय अनिरुद्धाय नमः संकर्षणाय च। Narada's glorious prayers. Today we will relish the encounter between Devarishi Narada and Vyasa, which happens to be the trigger for the composition of Srimad Bhagavatam. Suta continues his exposition to all the rishis of Naimisharanya in response to Shaunaka's questions. Suta, as he learned from Shukabrahma, summarizes all the avatars. And now he moves on further to talk about the advent of Srimad Bhagavatam. And in that process, he begins to glorify Shukha. He says, Drishtvanuyantam rishim atmajamapi anagnam devyo hriya paridadurna sutasya chitram तत्वीक्ष्य पृच्छन्ति मुनौ जगदुस्तवास्ति स्त्रीपुंभिदानतु सुतस्य विविक्तदृष्टेः. It seems as Shukha decided to move on, Vyasa followed him. As they were going on, they had to travel through, they had to cross a river. And there happened to be several Devakanyas, divine damsels, sporting in the river. The young Shukha initially crosses the river, and as he crosses the river, all the Devakanya, without any inhibitions whatsoever, continue to sport in the waters. And then the old Vyasa follows, and as Vyasa follows and starts to cross the river, all the Devakanyas begin to cover themselves with their robes. Now Vyasa notices this, and for a while he continues to go after Shukha, but somehow this bothers him. When young Shukha crossed the river, none of these Devakanyas bothered to cover themselves. And he, an old man, when he crossed, why did they do that? So he came all the way back and then inquired. He approached the Devakanyas and asked them, why did you do this? When my young son crossed the river, you had no inhibitions whatsoever. The Devakanyas gave a simple reply. Even this question, only you are asking us, not your young son. While you discriminated between a man and a woman, for Shukabrahma, he saw only the Atman everywhere. There was no distinction even between a man and a woman. Such was the glory of Shukabrahma. Thus, Suta glorifies Shukha and then goes on to recount how Vyasa fulfills his mission. Towards the end of Dwapara Yuga, Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa has a mission to be fulfilled. So therefore Vyasa initially takes up the Vedas, the one full body of the Vedas, and then classifies, categorizes them, classifies and divides them into 4 parts. Knowing fully well that in the coming days and years and centuries, men will be bereft of any capability to master all the Vedas. Therefore, he tries to simplify by classifying the Vedas, by dividing them into 4 parts. The Vedas get divided into Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, Atharva Veda. He then entrusts Rigveda to Rishi Paila, his disciple, so that Rishi Paila can then go on and take over the mission of passing on this knowledge. Vaishampayana is entrusted with Yajurveda, Jaimini with Samaveda, and Sumantu with Atharva Veda. After having carried out the task of dividing the Vedas, Vyasa is still not satisfied. He still feels that he needs to further simplify the Vedas for the sake of the common man. And therefore, Vyasa then engages in the composition of the Mahabharata, the Panchamo Veda. He completes the Mahabharata, but he still is not satisfied. He is not convinced that he has done enough. He still feels there is something missing in order to fulfill his mission. And he starts to contemplate, he starts to reflect. He starts to think about, he feels there is some deficiency. There is something that is still, there is something which is still missing. He goes on, he wants to consult with someone. And before consultation, he engages in contemplation. It is very important for us to contemplate, to take an appointment with ourselves. Most often we fail to do that. Deep thinking rooted in the truths of our scriptures is a prerequisite. And Vyasa does self-contemplation, thinking about what more he could do. And as he contemplates, he feels a sense of incompleteness. Tathapi badame dahyo hyatma chaivatma vibhuhu asampanna ivabhati brahmavarchasya sattamaha. Tathapi badame dahyo. He sees a defect in himself. There is a defect, something which is bothering me. And therefore, in spite, brahmavarchasya sattamaha, in spite of acquiring everything that the Vedas prescribe, in spite of mastering everything in the Vedas, there is that sense of incompleteness in him, which is unable to grapple with. What could that defect be which is leading to this sense of incompleteness? What more can I do to fulfill my mission? He is worried. And when he is worried, in that state of worry, appears Devarishi Narada. This is what happens. Narada happens to arrive always at the right time. When Narada arrived, when Valmiki was worried, and Ramayana happened. Now Vyasa is worried and Narada has arrived, Bhagavatam has to happen. And therefore, Narada appears. He reaches out to Vyasa as Vyasa is in a deep sense of anguish of not able to fulfill his mission. Immediately paying obeisances to Narada, Vyasa inquires as to the reason for his sense of incompleteness. What could be the cause of this incompleteness? Narada begins to diagnose the cause of Vyasa's unrest. He says, "Hey Vyasa, you did all the right things. You covered exhaustively Artha, Kama, Dharma, Moksha, all the Purusharthas. You did the right thing in classifying, in dividing the Vedas. You did the right thing by composing the Mahabharata. But there is only one thing which you did not do right. You did not adequately cover the glories of Bhagavan. You did not do justice to the blemishless glories of Bhagavan, his cheshtitas. You did not dwell too much time. You composed the Mahabharata, no doubt, and you got carried away looking at everything other than Krishna Katha, which should have been the core of the composition. While you have done everything right, there is only one thing which you have not done enough, which is to dwell more. And you, of all the people, you very well know Bhagavan's glorious Leelas, all his avatars, and in particular the Krishna avatara. And therefore, it is time that you capture the glories of Krishna, his cheshtitas. It is, after all, needed for Kali Yuga, and therefore, this is the cause of all your unrest, Vyasa. The moment you fulfill this mission, the moment you fulfill this task, your mission shall be fulfilled. And thus, Narada gives a sense of direction to Vyasa. And then Narada moves on and he talks to Vyasa in terms of the importance of any literary work. Narada looks at Vyasa and then he says, "Hey Vyasa, how can any work of literature, what is the yardstick to measure it? How can we say that any literature is of any value to people?" And he gives a very, very profound, simple but profound analogy. Narada says, "Nayat pachaschitrapadam harer yashoho jagat pavitram pragrinita karhichit tad payasam tirtam ushanti manasa nayatra hamsa niramanti ushikshayaha." Vayasam tirtam. He says the place of pilgrimage of crows. He says, "Hey Vyasa, just like how," he takes the analogy of the swans and the crows. The swans are compared to the saintly people. The swans of Manasarovar are compared to saintly people. The crows are compared to those who are driven by passion, those who are caught in the web of samsara. He says, just like how the swans which inhabit the Manasarovar, they do not in any way accept, they do not in any way desire, and therefore they discard a dirty muddle of water which is only fit enough for a bath for the crows. Just like how the swans of Manasarovar completely discard the muddy waters fit enough for a bath of the crows. Similarly, those who are true devotees, those who are the pious, those who are jnanis, the Paramahamsas, completely discard literature which does not cover the glories. Nayat vachas chitrapadam harer yashaha jagat pavitram pragranitaha gechit. That literature is considered useless tinsel if it does not cover the glories of Bhagavan Krishna. Any literature, if it does not take into account detailing the glorious cheshtitas of Krishna, it is like Vayasam Tirtham, place of pilgrimage for the crows. The crows have a habit. The crows always get together in a group on garbage heaps. When the crows decide to eat together, they all get together on garbage heaps. Narada here compares literature that does not cover the glories of Krishna as heaps of garbage. He says, what is the use of any literature if it does not kindle a sense of awe, a sense of reverence, a sense of devotion towards Krishna? What is the use of any literature if it does not enable one to connect with Krishna and perform bhakti to him? What is the use of any literature if it does not cover the Swarupa, Rupa, Guna, Vibhuti, the namas, the glories of the namas of Bhagavan? Such literature has to be completely discarded, he Vyasa. And then Narada also goes on to highlight the importance of bhakti over jnana and karma. Narada makes a profound declaration. Narada says, Naishkarmyamapi achyuta bhava varjitam na shobhate jnanamalam niranjanam kutah punashashvadabhadram ishware na charpitam karmayadyapi akaranam. Naishkarmyamapi achyuta bhava varjitam. He says, what is the use of any jnana? Jnana does not dazzle if it is devoid of bhakti. Jnana does not illumine. Knowledge it's supposed to illumine. Jnana does not illumine if it is devoid of bhakti. And if jnana devoid of bhakti is useless, then what to say of karma? Karma, be it with motive or be it without motive, karma which is not dedicated, which is not offered to Krishna, is also useless. No, an action without devotion is just a motion. Motion is movement of things. When we say motion, motion is referred always with respect to insentient things, unconscious things. Movement of insentient things is referred to as movement, is referred to as motion. But when conscious entities move, it is referred to as action. But action without devotion is just like motion. Now here, Narada makes a profound declaration on Naishkarmyam. He says, Naishkarmyam api achyuta bhava varjitam. What is Naishkarmya? Naishkarmya is a state devoid of raga and dvesha. Raga, attachment; dvesha, aversion. These are two forces, attachment and aversion. These are the twin forces which are the root cause for all our ills. So therefore, a state devoid of raga and dvesha, where one has one freedom over raga and dvesha, definitely a very exalted state. But here Narada says that state, he uses a very, very nice word. He says, Naishkarmyam api achyuta bhava varjitam na shobhate, he says. Na shobhate is not a beautiful state, he says. There is no beauty in that Naishkarmya. It's like one puts all the effort, cultivates a garden, with different varieties of trees and plants. But what is the use if the garden is bereft of any flowers? If there are no flowers, where is the beauty in the garden? If jnana does not blossom into bhakti, what is the use of such jnana? Naishkarmya is like a garden without any flowers. There is no beauty. He makes a very, very straight and blunt declaration. He says, Naishkarmyam api achyuta bhavam, achyuta bhava vajjitam. If there is no bhakti for achyuta, such naishkarmya, such state of jnana is not beauty. There is no beauty in that state at all. Essentially saying, self-control definitely is a very valuable virtue. In any spiritual journey, self-control is a very valuable virtue, a very important virtue to be cultivated. But one needs to understand that there is a danger of the self-control bringing in an illusion of one being the controller. Self-control can induce an illusion of the self being the controller. This can be a dangerous state. Self-control is needed to understand the reality, to come to terms with the reality that one is at best only a cooperator, not a controller. No, we are all cooperators at best. We are not controllers. We think we control, but in reality, everything is beyond our control. In reality, we can only cooperate. If we need to succeed, if any action has to succeed, it is an action of cooperation, in harmony with the will of the only controller, the supreme controller. So at best, the individual is only a cooperator and not a controller. Self-control is to be used. The purpose of self-control is to self-connect with the supreme controller in a bond of loving servitude. That is the purpose of self-control. So Narada here is saying, if that bond of love with Krishna is absent, then that state of self-control has no beauty, is useless. Naishkarmyam api achyuta bhava varjitam na shobhate. That self-control is of no use in further progressing on the spiritual path. So one needs to necessarily use self-control to self-connect with Krishna, the supreme controller, the one and only controller, and bond with him. And it is only Krishna who can then bring that beauty, that bliss, to that state of staying connected with him. Kuta punashashpadabhadram ishvare nacharpitam karmayadapi akaranam. So therefore, jnana devoid of bhakti is of no use. Karma which is not offered to Bhagavan, any karma, whether it is with a motivation or without motivation, whether with a reward seeking or completely selfless, a karma has to be offered to Krishna. Otherwise, it is of no use. So thus, Narada upfront highlights. The reason why Narada is highlighting this to Vyasa is to drive home the point that now Vyasa, in his next composition, needs to necessarily dwell a lot more on this aspect of bhakti. And that is the reason why Narada advises Vyasa. Therefore, Narada says, hey Vyasa, you are endowed with insight. You are blessed with the vision of knowing everything. You have composed Mahabharata with the vision that is given to you. You know all the cheshtitas of Krishna. You know the purpose of his avatara. You are endowed with the knowledge of all his glories, all his gunas, all his namas, and therefore you have a duty. Vyasa, you have a duty to the mankind to record all of that and come up with a work that will speak aloud the glories of Krishna. And Narada also says, hey Vyasa, even an ordinary person in future must know the goal of life, because it is very difficult for an ordinary person to look at the body of knowledge that is available and come to terms with what should be the goal of life, what should be the goal of all goals. One may have several goals, but what should be the goal of all goals? So therefore, in your work that you are going to now compose, hey Vyasa, you should also be very clear as to highlight, even to an ordinary person, what should be the goal of all goals, what should be the ultimate goal of life. And then Narada says, Tasyeva hetoho prayateta kovidaha na labhyate yad brahmatab uparadyaha tallabhyate dukkavat anantya sukham kalena sarvatra gabhiraram hasa. He says, na labhyate yad brahmatab uparyadaha. He says, how should one who set one's goal? A goal, he says, a kovida. Who is a kovida? One who is skillful, one who is wise. One who is truly wise, he sets the right goal. He sets the right goal, a goal that is not possible to be achieved, that is not possible to be attained wherever one traverses in the cycle of samsara. Whichever loka one goes, that goal is not attained. Such should be the goal. That is the ultimate goal. Which means, as long as one in samsara, this is what? This is essentially the goal of eternal bliss. This is the goal of total freedom from all afflictions. Wherever one goes, wherever one traverses in this created world, from birth to death in cycles, traveling all the lokas, there is no way to attain freedom from all kinds of afflictions, physical and mental. Physical afflictions, thirst, hunger, heat, cold, fatigue, disease, death. Mental afflictions, agitations, jealousy, anger, greed, fear. There is no way that one can gain freedom from all kinds of afflictions and experience eternal bliss. So therefore, the goal of eternal bliss can only be attained outside of this created world by reaching the lotus feet of Krishna. That a kovida, a skillful person, knows. He says, what is the point in struggling? Tallabhyate dukkavat anyata sukham kalena sarvatra gabhiraram hasa. What is the point in having a goal to experience happiness in this very world? Struggling with goals in this very world, what is the point? He says, anyway, without effort, one will experience sukha and dukkha in this world, he says. Because the prarabdha is set into motion. According to one's prarabdha, there are going to be series of experiences of sukha and dukkha. Whether one puts effort or no effort, the prarabdha which is set in motion in once takes birth, one is going to experience a series of sukha and dukkha. And in reality, in this cycle of samsara, there is no real sukha. Why? Every sukha eventually will lead to dukkha only, because sukha is only temporary. A sukha will by design transform into dukkha. And therefore there is only dukkha here in this created world. So therefore, what is the point with all the struggle? All the struggle that one goes through, trying to set goals, trying to be happy, trying to experience never-ending happiness, it is impossible. One needs to be a kovida, one needs to be skillful, one needs to be wise in setting the right kind of goal, to understand that one does not belong to this material world. One belongs to Krishna, not here. Therefore, one needs to go home and not stay out and keep struggling forever in the cycle of samsara. And therefore, this needs to come out loud and clear here, Vyasa. This, how to understand what is the purpose of life. how to set the right kind of goal, how to know that Krishna is the goal of goals, is the ultimate goal. That needs to come out loud and clear, and therefore it is your duty, Vyasa, to do a work, to come up with a text that clearly highlights the goal of all goals. And he also says, it is very important to know that the moment one starts developing ruchi for Krishna, Krishna Trishna, the moment it happens, then there can be no more miseries. There are no more in this life. One can endure, grow through, and one may keep falling and rising. From a materialistic point of view, that does not matter, because eventually, after the finish of prarabdha, one is bound to get freedom from the cycle of birth and death. And therefore, Narada shares the ultimate truth with Vyasa. He says, idam hi pumsas tapasas shrutasva suvishtasya suktasya cha buddhidattayoho avichuto artha kavibir nirupitaha yat uttama shloka gunanuvarnanam. So therefore, hey Vyasa, what is your duty now? Uttama shloka gunanuvarnanam. He calls Krishna Uttama shlokaha. What a beautiful nama. Krishna is Uttama, is supreme, but he is also called Uttama shlokaha. Vedaischa sarvair ahameva vedya, Krishna declares. Every sacred text has only one objective: to glorify Krishna. Therefore, he is Uttama shloka. Uttama shloka gunanuvarnanam. No, the ultimate truth is to realize that the consummation of every spiritual activity, tapas, shrutas, tapasaha, austerities, shrutasya, study of the Vedas, svishtasya, sacrifice, performance of yajnas, buddhihi, development of a discriminatory knowledge, dattayoho, charities, or any kind of spiritual activities. The consummation of any spiritual activity is to realize that one ultimately needs to sing the glories of Krishna. Otherwise, any spiritual activity, if it does not culminate in experiencing Krishna's glories, that spiritual activity sees no fulfillment. And therefore, gunanuvarnanam, to describe the glorious gunas of Uttama Shloka Krishna is the very consummation of any spiritual activity. And therefore, hey Vyasa, you need to necessarily engage in Uttama Shloka Gunanuvarnanam. And Narada says, let me share with you my own experience to highlight why Uttama Shloka Gunanuvarnanam is crucial. And then Narada goes on to give an account of his own past life. He says, in the previous kalpa, hey Vyasa, in the previous kalpa, I was born as a son to a maid servant who used to serve. This maid servant used to serve Brahmanas, great Bhagavatas. And I happened to spend my time amidst all these Brahmanas, unknowingly or knowingly serving them. And on one fine day, I happened to consume their uchishta. I partook the remnants of the food of these pious Brahmanas, and that was the trigger for me to start acquiring jnana, not just ordinary jnana, bhakti rupapanna jnana, jnana that blossoms into bhakti. And having been exposed constantly to the discourses of these Bhagavatas used to constantly only contemplate, constantly only talk about Krishna's glories all the time. And listening to them throughout, constantly being exposed to their discourses, I started developing taste, longing for Krishna. I started developing jnana, and I started knowing Krishna more and more. And then, one fine day, after the 4 months, the Chaturmasya, when it was time for these Brahmanas to move on, they recognized that I am qualified now to receive the ultimate jnana, and they imparted to me that transcendental knowledge. Guhyatamam jnanam. How like Krishna gave that confidential knowledge, the knowledge of Bhakti Yoga, the 9th chapter to Krishna, to Arjuna, that confidential, highly, supremely confidential knowledge, the transcendental knowledge of how one stays connected with Krishna all the time, that knowledge was bestowed to me by those Mahatmas. And it is because of that knowledge that now I started then to start searching for Krishna. Now that taste, that longing for Krishna started to drive me to have his glorious vision. Not a single day passed when I did not stop contemplating on Bhagavan's glorious gunas. I was meditating day in and day out, staying connected with him, seeking his vision. And I was waiting for the moment when I will have his glorious darshana. And I also learned one very important lesson here, Vyasa, that when karma is dedicated to the Supreme, it destroys the threefold miseries. All the tapatrayas get destroyed when karma is performed as kainkarya. Narada says, let me tell you, Vyasa, a secret out of my own experience. He says, Amayo yascha bhutanam chayate yena suvrata tadevahi amayam dravyam na punati chikitsitam. Amayaha means disease. He says, let me tell you, the cause for a disease and the cure of the disease is actually the same, He Vyasa. We may be wondering, how can the cause of the disease and the cure of the disease be the same? As an example, for some, milk and milk products can cause issue with the bowels. But the same milk transformed into curd with some herbs added becomes a medicine to treat the bowels. So it is the same milk, in one way or the other, is both the cause of the disease and the cure of the disease as well. Now, obviously, Narada is here not talking about milk and milk products. He is talking about how the same karma can be binding in nature, or it is the same karma which can be liberating in nature. It is the same mind which can be binding in nature. It is the same mind which can be liberating in nature. Manayeva manushyanam karanam bandahetav. So for moksha, mind is the cause. For samsara, mind is the cause. It is the same action which binds us. It is the same action which can be liberated. It is the same vehicle. Taken otherwise, for the Atman, it is the same body. It is the same vehicle. It's like it is the same car which can take me to my destination, or it is the same car which can make me go around in circles, lost. So the cause of the disease and the cure for the disease is the same. It is how that karma is transmuted into kainkarya. Narada says, based on my own life experience, I learned that the moment I started transmuting, it's like alchemy. In the ancient days, alchemy was believed that there was alchemy where any base metal can be transmuted into gold. That was the science of alchemy. You take any metal and then you can transmute into gold. Similarly, any action whatsoever can be transmuted into gold, into liberating action, when you add Krishna principle to it. When Krishna walks in and becomes a partner in every action, and also he becomes the recipient of the rewards of the action, then magic happens. The same action which was the cause of the disease, becomes the cure of the disease. Narada says, therefore, the path to attain Krishna is to perform karma rooted in jnana and transmute and transform this karma, cultivate vairagya, and eventually with karma, the combination of jnana, karma, vairagya will blossom into bhakti, and that bhakti will result in us rediscovering our connection with Bhagavan, our alignment with Bhagavan, and that is that bhakti which takes us, it is the means to mukti, and it is also, after attaining mukti, it is also the way we continue to experience Bhagavan in a state of mukti. Therefore, the importance, the significance of bhakti is highlighted by Narada based on his own experience. He says, hey Vyasa, this is something you need to necessarily do in the work that you are going to compose now. Now, moving on to the next adhyaya, in adhyaya 6, Vyasa has a question to ask Narada. He says, Narada, how did you then end up in this role? Now you are a Devarishi. What happened? And what happened to you after you received that supreme knowledge? What happened to you? I am very curious to know, asks Vyasa. Then Narada goes back and recounts his past. He says, I continued there serving my mother. And then, after several years, when a serpent bit my mother, a poisonous serpent, she lost her life. And then I started traveling northwards. I started walking and I went on searching for my Krishna. A desire to see him, desire to have his glorious darshana. Constantly meditating on his glories, I walked and I crossed several regions. I crossed several villages, I crossed several cities, I crossed several rivers, I crossed several mountains, I crossed several forests, and then I reached a place of a forest of dense forest. And then, refreshing myself, I sat down under a banyan tree and I started to meditate. So now Narada shares his experience with Vyasa. He says, sitting under the banyan tree, I started to meditate. He says, Dhyayatas charanam bhojam bhava nirjita chetasa aukantya asrukalakshasya hridyasmin me shanair harihi. A very, very beautiful shloka. He says, Dhyayatascha charanam bhojam. I started meditating on the lotus feet of Krishna. Bhava nirjita chetasa. Bhava nirjita chetasa. With my mind rendered still and full. Not just still, also full. Still by overcoming the movements of the mind. By overcoming the movements of my mind, if I let my mind to be, it is always in a state of agitation. The mind is always in a state of move, because there are always thoughts being processed all the time. By rendering the mind still and also full with love for Krishna, not just still, but filling the mind with love for Krishna. Bhava nirjita chetasa. Outkantya, with intensity of eagerness, with intensity to experience Krishna. Now, this is what is called Krishna Trishna. Now, that intense desire to experience him. Ashrukala. When something is delightful beyond expectations, unknowingly tears start to roll. Narada says, my eyes started to be full of tears, and it started to roll. Why? Because I started to experience that state of delight beyond my expectation. I was in a state of ecstasy, a state of bliss. He says, Hridiyasin me shanair harihi. Because that very moment, I not only experienced Hari, I also had a glorious vision. I could see him. I could see him in my heart. His glorious form. He presented himself. Krishna is ever present. Krishna's presence is always there. Krishna's presence in us and with us is always there. But when we recognize his presence, he gives us a present. His presence is always there, within us and with us. It is important for us to recognize his presence. And when we recognize his presence, he gives us a present, a gift. He reveals his glorious form to us. This is exactly what happens to Narada here. Hridiyasin me shanair harihi. Bhagavan reveals himself, his glorious form, and no wonder tears were rolling down. He was unable to contain that ecstasy, that bliss which is beyond any definition. But what is here important is that process that he underwent here. What Narada is sharing with Vyasa. He says, Dhyayataha charanam bhojam. Charanam bhojam. It all started with the meditation on the lotus feet of Krishna. The mind needs an anchor. Without an anchor, the mind is lost. The mind is like a boat in an ocean, subject to the waves, the currents, always tossing, never steady. The boat needs an anchor to be steadied. Now, the word anchor is very interesting. Anchor is both a noun and a verb, interestingly. Anchor is both a noun and a verb. When we say an anchor as a noun, the anchor for a boat is nothing but a heavy object to which the boat is tied so that it ensures that the boat remains steady. Anchor is also a verb. To anchor is the process, the act of connecting the boat to the heavy object. Now, when Krishna becomes both the anchor, which is noun, and the verb, that is when we reach a truly blissful state. And the beauty here is, it is only Krishna who can be both the anchors. The anchor which is the noun, the anchor which is the verb. He is the supreme anchor for the mind, as the noun, as the object which can hold the boat and steady it. Why? Because he is the only one who is eternally beautiful, not subject to any blemishes. Every other anchor for the mind is subject to changes all the time. If there is one anchor which is unchanging, blemishless, infinitely beautiful, it is only that supreme anchor, Krishna. Also, we need to understand, Krishna is not just a passive object of meditation. He is not just a passive principle, quote unquote. He is an active person as well. Active, caring, compassionate, loving person. And therefore, when one tries to connect with him as he being the anchor, and one is struggling to connect with him, he doesn't remain passive. He doesn't remain passive, just witnessing the struggle. He actively connects. He ensures, that is the reason, Bhava Nirjita Chetasa. He infuses the mind with the right kind of bhava. He infuses the mind with the right kind of rasa, so that one can bind with him in that love, filled with love in the mind. He infuses that love in the mind. And that is the reason why. And it is not just the stillness of the mind. That is why I said bhava nirjita chetasa is not just rendering the mind still. It is also rendering the mind still and full of Krishna. Love for him. And when that happens, that is a state of ultimate bliss. And in that state, that sadhaka, that bhakta, not only just experiences Krishna, he is also presented with that glorious darshana of the form. That's exactly what happens to Narada. Now Narada then goes on to say, Prematibhara nirbhinna pulakango atinivritaha ananda samplave linaha napashyam ubhayam mune. Narada is sharing his bliss, his supreme, that state that is reached with Vyasa. He says, Prematibhara nirbhinna pulakango ati nivritaha ananda samplave linaha napashyan ubhayam mune. Prematibhara nirbhinna pulakango ati nivritaha. With horripilations all over his body. With completely getting immersed in the ocean of love, in the ocean of bliss, with his mind completely taken over by nothing else other than love for Krishna, with no anxieties of the future, with no worries of the past, with complete stop to all the analysis paralysis that goes on in the mind, with the mind completely connected with Krishna and Krishna alone. That state of Ananda, in that state of Ananda, Narada says, what happened to me, Vyasa? Napashyan ubhayam mune. I couldn't see both, he says. Napashyan ubhayam mune. What did he not see? Narada says, I reached that stage where my body did not matter anymore. Even my own self, the Atman, also did not matter anymore, because now I have realized that I am beyond this body. In that supreme state of bliss, I realized I am not just this body, I am beyond this body, over and above. And not only that, even I, the Atman, is just a part of the whole. And I started to experience the bliss of that whole, WHOLE. And I am the part belonging to that whole. It is like, what happens when a cell in a body starts to visualize and experience the whole body of trillion cells. I was in that state where I realized that I am no one without Krishna. I am inseparable from him and I have no existence without him. He is the source of all my bliss. That was such a blissful state. And he says, you should know this. Rupam bhagavato yattan manaha kantam shuchapaham. He says, the moment the glorious form of Bhagavan is revealed in the mind, it captivates the mind and it completely destroys all sorrows. At that very moment, he says. It is very important to understand that the mind is like, it's like the inner screen that constantly keep playing all kinds of movies based on what the senses bring from outside, and also based on what is stored inside as vasanas as well. Now, whenever we are looking at the screen and trying to do something, any activity, all these, just like how when we are surfing the net, there are pop-ups keep coming all the time. Now, the moment we start to give attention to any of this pop-up, that pop-up takes over completely the screen space. Now, the only way to destroy all of these pop-ups caused by the various stimuli coming from the senses is to constantly and repeatedly keep playing only one movie on the screen of the mind, which is nothing but Krishna Katha. So Narada says, as long as the movie called Krishna Katha is being played on the screen of the mind, all the miseries are completely destroyed. There is no room for the miseries to be replayed on the screen of the mind. Having said this, then Narada says, something sudden happened. Let me share that also with you. Apashyan sahasotaste vaiklavya durmana iva. All of a sudden, I somehow lost that vision. And then, having lost that vision, I kind of got pushed out of that state, of that divine that blissful state, and I was extremely distressed to come out of that state of witnessing that glorious vision. Narada says, I was not sure what happened to me, hey Vyasa. I started to now search for him. I started to search. Narayana revealed himself to me, and all of a sudden he stopped revealing his glorious form to me. And I started looking out everywhere. I couldn't find him anymore. He was lost. And that was a source of great distress for me. And then I was not sure what to do. And then Bhagavan spoke to me. Narayana addresses Narada and says, Narada, the only reason I revealed my glorious form to you only once is to create that intense longing in you. You are still not qualified to continue to experience that vision of mine. And therefore, when time comes, you shall be bestowed with that as well. And then Narada says, and therefore thereafter I continued waiting for my prarabdha to be completely exhausted. And then at the right time, when my prarabdha was completely exhausted, that body of mine also dissolved. I got freedom from that body, and it was at the end of last kalpa. And then when the current kalpa started, I was blessed to take birth as Brahma's Manasaputra. And this is my current avatar. What you see here, Narada, the Devarishi, is the blessing that I received because of my Purva Janma Punya Karma. And in this avatar of mine, I have been given a mission. The mission to go around. I have been endowed with a unique power with which I can travel across the lokas. Travel everywhere, sing and chant the glories of Bhagavan. Take his message to every nook and corner across all lokas. And then Narada says, Pragayataha swaviryani tirtapada priyasravaha ahuta ivame shighram darshanam yati chetasi. Now he says, you know now what, Vyasa? Let me share with you a secret. Pragayata swaviryani tirtapada priyasravaha. Whenever I start to sing and chant the glorious namas, the glorious forms, the glories of that lotus feet of Bhagavan, whenever I start, something very magical happens. Ahuta ivame shighram darshanam yati chetasi. Just like how when you call out a person, he immediately lands up. Srihari ends up immediately coming. Basically, he is at my beck and call now. The moment I call out, he is there. He reveals himself to me all the time. Therefore, every moment is magical. No wonder I keep continuously singing. Why? I don't want him to go back. He remains continuously revealing his glorious form to me. Not just once, not twice, not thrice. I keep singing out, I keep calling out his names, he keeps revealing his glorious form to me, and that is the reason why I am always in a state of bliss wherever I go. Here, Narada also shares a very important message and a secret. When we call out, does Krishna reciprocate? Narada categorically assures that Krishna, when we do bhakti to him, he is the object of bhakti, but he is not a passive object. He is someone who reciprocates, and he actually, in the relationship with him, he gives more than he takes. Very important to understand this. Now the question is, how do we recognize that he reciprocates all the time? He reciprocates. It's up to us whether we recognize. There are 3 steps to recognize Krishna's reciprocation: intention, attention, affection. The first step is intention. To have that earnest desire, that intense intention, intensity of desire to connect with him, to seek nothing else other than him. The strength of that intention is very, very important. When that intention is very intense, then the next step is to pay full attention. Krishna, when he reciprocates, to completely pay attention to him. And when our attention is fully on him and him alone, then we start to recognize that he is someone who loves us more than we love him. He is someone whose grace is constantly streaming down. It is up to us whether we immerse in his grace or not. And this is where the third step becomes very important. Both the intention and attention has to be infused with adequate affection for Krishna. And when this happens, every time we call out to him, we can recognize that he reciprocates to us. And Narada says, Pragayata svaviryani tirthapada priyashravaha ahuta iva me shigram tashanam yati chet. Shigram, he comes running all the time. Now, it's up to us whether we call him once, twice, thrice, 10 times, 100 times. Like Narada says, I decided to keep calling him all the time. Therefore, he continues to reveal himself to me all the time. And that's the reason why I'm in a state of constant bliss. And Narada says, let me share with you my personal experience that I've learned and that I'm putting in practice today. He says, Etat hi atura chittanam matra sparshechaya muhuhu bhavasindu plavadrashtaha haricharyanu varananam. What a beautiful shloka this is. Narada says, let me share with this. He says, Etat hi atura chittanam. The pandemic called anxiety. All of us, unfortunately, are going through a pandemic. But there has been one pandemic which has always been there throughout human history, which is the pandemic called anxiety. Atura chittana. And this anxiety pandemic is because of the factors of uncontrollability, unpredictability of this nature of this created world. And he says, Matra sparshechaya muhuhu. Infatuation for this material world is the cause for this anxiety pandemic, Narada says. Matra sparshechaya, the desire to contact the sense objects with the senses is the cause for this anxiety. Matra sparshastu kaunteya sitoshna sukadukkadaha agamapayino anityaha tamstitiksha. Krishna declares in the Gita. The senses and the sense objects keep interacting with each other and producing all kinds of results. It could be experiences which are painful, it could be experiences which are joyful, but tam stitikshasva bharata. You have to endure them as they are only temporary, they are not permanent. To understand anityatva of every experience in this cycle of samsara is crucial. Every experience is anitya. For few moments I experience joy, but it is just for few moments. It is anitya. For few moments I experience pain. It is anitya. How do I predict what is going to be the nature of an experience that's going to come on in future? Beyond my control, beyond prediction. Therefore, because of lack of control, because of inability to predict, the mind seeking permanence in a place which is impermanent, in a place which is fragile, is anxiety ridden. Etat hi atura chittanam matra spashechaya muhu bhavasindu plavadrashtaha hari charyanu varnanam. Narada says, what is the way out of this? He gives a beautiful analogy. He says, Bhavasindu plavaha. The boat to cross over this ocean of misery. There is only one boat. Bhavasindu plavadrashtaha hari charyanuvarnanam. Anuvarnanam. Constant recitation, constant contemplation, constant meditation, chanting, singing, Hari Charyanuvar, not only his glories but also his cheshtitas. Because Bhagavan through his cheshtitas also repeatedly demonstrates how to overcome anxieties, how to endure pain and pleasures. Every time we contemplate on his avatara cheshtitas, we learn several life lessons. Every time we experience his guna, we experience supreme bliss. Therefore, Narada says, what is the recourse for this anxiety pandemic? He says, Krishna is our mind sanitizer. He is our mind sanitizer in order to overcome, conquer this pandemic called anxiety. And constant chanting and singing of his glories, of his deeds, of his glorious deeds, of his leelas is like the boat that can transfer us, that can safely help us cross over this ocean of samsara riddled with all kinds of anxieties. And then Narada highlights the supremacy of bhakti. Towards the end of the 6th adhyaya, Narada once again highlights the importance of bhakti to Vyasa. Not that Vyasa does not know. Narada wants to ensure, Narada has a mission here. He is the trigger for Srimad Bhagavatam. And therefore, he takes every opportunity to drive home the central message that he wants to convey. Yamadibir yogapataihi kamalobha hato muhuhu mukunda sevaya yadvat tatatmadha na shamyati. He says, Vyasa, one must realize, Yamadibir yogapataihi kamalobha hato muhuhu. Kama and lobha, desire and greed, these are two twin forces. And in the journey of life, it is very important to win over these twin forces of Kama and Lobha. Yes, the pathway of Ashtanga Yoga definitely helps one, gives relief against Kama and Lobha. Yamadibhir yoga pataihi. When he says Yamadibhi, Yama, Niyama, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Asana, Dharana, all these are the various steps that one undertakes on the pathway of yoga, self-mastery. Definitely, the pathway of yoga brings relief against Kama and Lobha, no doubt. But it only brings temporary relief. If one needs permanent relief, Narada says there is only one solution. Mukunda sevaya yadvat tatatmadhana samyati. Mukunda sevaya. The life has to become prayerful. One has to lead a life of prayer. The life has to become a constant endeavor in Mukunda Seva. He uses here word Mukunda for Krishna. Muktim dadati Mukundaha. He is the only one who can give us all kinds of mukti. Mukti, freedom from kama and lobha in this very world, and the ultimate mukti of eternal freedom from kama and lobha as well. For all kinds of mukti from all negative forces, to overcome the forces of rajas and tamas, to cultivate sattva. No, sattva is only one force. Rajas and tamas, they are in majority. How do we fight against the majority? Partnering with Krishna. The moment Krishna becomes the partner, and one starts to strive, to endeavor, to do everything as Mukunda Seva, service to Mukunda alone, then Ashtanga Yoga is not needed at all. Because Ashtanga Yoga, not many are qualified to perform. So the path of yoga, no doubt, hey Vyasa, can bring relief from kama and lobha, but for the larger masses, they should understand that there is a easier, more blissful path available, the path of Mukunda Seva. And therefore, hey Vyasa, Mukunda Seva should be at the very core of the text that you are going to compose. Thus, Narada gives a very important message to Vyasa here, shares his own previous life experiences, shares wisdom of supreme bhakti to Vyasa, and also encourages Vyasa to move on, to fulfill, to complete his life's mission by composing the glorious Srimad Bhagavatam, which took birth in order to exhaustively cover Sri Krishna Katha, exhaustively celebrate the glories of Bhagavan's namas and cheshtitas, exhaustively celebrate his swarupa, his rupa, his various forms, glorious forms, his gunas, his namas. And thus Narada, once again being the catalyst for this glorious incident, he takes leave of Vyasa, and then towards thus concluding the 6th adhyaya of the Prathama Skanda, Suta beautifully captures Aho Devarishir Dhanyoyam, Aho Devarishir. Blessed is that Narada, the Devarishi. Aho Devarishir Dhanyoyam. Yakirtim Shangadan Manaha. Yakirtim Shangadan Manaha. Gayan Madhyan Idam Tantriya. Ramayati Aturam Jagat. He is the one with the veena in hand, constantly is going around singing the glories of Bhagavan all the time. What a great service. Who else can do this kind of a service? When he is singing aloud Bhagavan's namas, when he is singing aloud Bhagavan's glories, not only he is experiencing the bliss, he is ennobling, empowering, enabling hundreds and thousands and millions of people to also experience the bliss of Krishna. And therefore, blessed is Narada, blessed is his avatara. Let us prostrate to Devarishi Narada, but for whom we wouldn't have this glorious Srimad Bhagavatam today. Let us prostrate to Vedavyasa, who, after going through contemplation on what was the reason for his incompleteness, then engages in consultation with Narada and makes a firm conclusion that he has to engage now in writing Krishna Katha and That's we see the advent of Srimad Bhagavatam. We also need to prostrate to that great Bhakta, the great Jnani, Shukabhrahma, who is the one who recounted the entire Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj. And of course, prostrations to Suta and Shaunaka, who were also great instruments to pass on that treasury to all of us. Sarvam Sri Krishna Arpanamastu.